Hello friends, my name is Marina and this is Rapunzel Fiber Arts. Today I am going to be undoing a project. So I have this sweater which I've been working on for a while, long enough that when I started this project I didn't fully understand ease in garment making. So if I finish this with the current size, it's going to be snug, to put it mildly. So I don't want that. And what I'm going to do is frog or rip out this sweater. That would be pretty straightforward, except that it's two strands of yarn held together. So in addition to ripping out this project and re-skeining it for washing, because all of the yarn is going to be holding its shape from the knitted garment, and so it's going to be all crinkly like ramen, you need to wash it before you can really work with it again. At least that's what I like to do. So I have to rip out or frog this sweater. It's called frogging because you rib it. Get it? Anyway, I'm gonna do that while also separating this into two separate strands of yarn, which is gonna be a little bit tricky. I've been kind of postponing this project because it's a little bit tricky, but I figure today's as good of a day to tackle it as any, and I might as well bring you along for the ride. So I'm going to set you up at a little bit of a better angle to see this process, and we are going to get to frogging. I've got the back, which is completely done, and then most of one of the front sides. So we're gonna start with this because it's the one still on the needles, and hopefully it goes relatively smoothly and I don't spend hours and hours untangling yarn, but that's kind of the worst case scenario. I don't think it'll be that bad. So stay tuned and I will see you again in a minute. All right, friends, so here is my plan. I've got my ball winder here, and I'm going to wind one ball while I hand wind another ball. That's my plan. Hopefully it goes smoothly, but no promises. So first thing we have to do is take these balls and get one of them started on the ball winder. So I'm just gonna pick one randomly, find the end, and get it started on the ball winder. Hang on, I'll angle you better. Alright friends, so I'm just getting this ball wound onto the ball winder as best I can. I had to do a little bit of finicky work to get it to wind on easily, but compared to what we have coming, this was smooth sailing. So brace yourself for that. But here I go. It's a little bit out of frame, unfortunately, but you can kind of see I'm holding part of the ball so that it kind of smoothly comes off. It just slips through my fingers, and I am able to wind the rest of the remaining yarn into a ball so that I can get started. Alright, so we have gotten that started on the ball winder. So we will also be hand winding this into a ball, so I'll get that started. And then we're gonna slide these stitches off the needles since we're taking it off. You wanna separate out your stitch markers and not lose them on the floor. And then I'm just gonna set this aside in a little basket I have. I'm actually gonna put it over here. And then we're just gonna get started winding and do both. And hopefully this doesn't take 1.5 years, but it might. Alright, so here I go attempting to wind both of these balls at once. As I'm sure you can see, it is not going well. I would definitely recommend, if you are in this situation where you are unwinding something that you had 2 balls held together, or 2 yarns held together, that you get a friend or a partner or a crafting buddy to give you a hand with this, because as you'll see, once I rope my partner into this with me, it gets a lot easier. It wasn't even worth it in comparison. This is not going as smoothly as I'd hoped, and I wasn't hoping for very much. Maybe it makes sense to wind one ball first. It's too late though, because I have 2 separate balls. I don't want to cut my yarn if I can help it. So I guess we're just going to keep doing it like this. I'm pulling out a bit at a time. See how that's all crinkled up like ramen? So I'm pulling out a little bit, and then taking my hand wound ball and trying to untangle it. This would be a lot easier with 2 people. I might have to recruit my boyfriend if this keeps being really difficult. Because he's not, oh yeah, it's turning into a disaster, guys. Anyway, I was saying he's not great at hand winding balls, but he can at least crank this. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna recruit him to help me when he gets home, because this is just a little bit too tricky to do by myself. So I'll check back in when he's home and has time to give me a hand with this for a little bit. And hopefully that goes a little bit more smoothly. Alright friends, so I'm back here now with Alex, and he is going to be cranking the ball winder while I hand wind, and hopefully doing that, this will be a little bit more smooth than trying to do it by myself. Alright Alex, you ready?
Yes.
Alright, start cranking. Hang on, the cable's making it stuck. There we go. So wherever I did a cable, it keeps getting stuck there. Alright, so as you heard me say a moment ago, every time I had a cable on this project, it required a little bit more work to pick apart than just pulling on the on the yarn and it coming unraveled. It needed to be kind of teased apart a little bit, which was fine, but it did add a little bit of time to this process. Other than that, having Alex here really helped. It made unraveling this project go much more smoothly, so I would definitely recommend getting a second person to help you if you're doing something like this. You also can see me occasionally pausing to allow some twist to release from the active knitting project. That's just because the two strands of yarn are wrapped around each other, and sometimes there's a little bit more twist in one direction than the other, and it adds up, and I'm just kind of letting that twist unravel, and that enables me to more easily unravel the rest of the sweater. We repeated this process for the second piece of knitting that was already finished, and that wrapped up our process of removing this from knitted garment into yarn form. So that went pretty smoothly once I had Alex involved, which was fantastic, and I hope you can see that we kind of got the hang of it, and it wasn't too bad once we got into the swing of things. All right, friends, so we've got our balls of yarn all balled up, which is great. Alex was a huge help in getting these ready to be skeined up. So the next step is going to be taking our nitty knotty and winding these into hanks or skeins. So I'm going to get started doing that. I've got a basket here, which I'm going to put the ball of yarn into, and then I'm just going to start skeining. If you want more information about how to skein, I have a video which I will link. Alright friends, so as I get started here, there was a little bit of an issue where some of the inside of the yarn guts were coming out of this ball of yarn, so I just wrapped those up and tucked them back into the center of this center pull ball. That's the tricky part of working with center pull balls, is that you can sometimes have the inside come out, but it was pretty easy to just tuck away, and that went pretty smoothly, and everything from here on is pretty smooth going. The tricky part was getting these wound into balls, and from here on out everything kind of went as planned. So as I get to the end of the ball of yarn here, it gets a little tangly again. The yarn guts are just being a little bit troublesome, but it all works out. It just needed a little bit of patience and a little bit of time, and it was not a big deal, so that was good. And I've got this whole ball pretty much wound up and ready to be tied up into a skein. All right, friends, so we have skeined up our yarn. I have tied it in 4 places just like I always do, and now we're gonna pull it off of the nitty knotty. Just find one of the loose corners. And you see this has a bit of ramen activity still in the yarn. It's not as bad as it was when we first frogged the sweater, but it's still there. But a nice wash in warm water will get rid of this very quickly, and then it just needs to dry, and then it'll be usable again. So I'm going to repeat this process for the other 4 balls of yarn that we have, and then we will have successfully frogged our sweater. Hello friends! So I got all this yarn skeined up. There's a lot of it, And the next step for getting it ready to be knit with again, so it doesn't have this ramen-like yarn texture, you want it to be kind of smooth like when you first bought it. So the next step to get this back to that state is going to be washing it, which is why we're back in the kitchen. I've already filled my sink with some nice warm water. So we're gonna take some soap, get a little bit in there, all swirled around. And then we're gonna take our first skein, grab it where we have one of our ties, kind of loop your fingers through the skein there, and then I'm gonna wash this. Push it into the water and pull it out. Do that a couple of times. And then when I get it in the water, I kind of smoosh it down. And that gives it a little bit of agitation. And now you see, it helps that it's wet, but it's lost that ramen-like texture. And when this is dry, it will still not have that texture. It will be smooth like yarn should be. So this is going to sit and soak, and I'm gonna get the other 4 balls washed as well. And then these will sit for about 20 minutes, and then they'll go outside to get hung up and start drying. The other thing I noticed when I was skeining this up was that there was a fair bit of dust in the yarn. I was having a little bit of an allergic reaction, which I don't have all that much. So I wasn't thrilled about it, but washing this yarn should get any dust or allergens out of it, hopefully. Right, friends, so here I am just getting the last couple of skeins into the wash water. These will sit for about 20 minutes, and then I will come back, and here I have come back after 20 minutes, and I am squeezing as much water out of the skeins as possible and putting them into my wool only salad spinner. It's specifically for wool. I don't use it for food items because I use it for raw fleece and dyeing projects as well. So I'm just squeezing all of the water out of this yarn, putting it into that salad spinner, and then I'm going to show you the wash water because you can really see the difference before and after. All right, friends, so here is our washed yarn. It still needs to be rinsed, but I want to just show you this and how dirty this water is. I think that's just dust and oil from my skin that just came off of this yarn because this is commercial yarn. It shouldn't have dirt in it like something that I processed from fleece might. So just another good reason to wash your yarn in between projects. If you're reusing it, it gets dirty. All right, so I have refreshed the water in the sink, so it is now full of clean water. It's no longer that dirty, grimy looking stuff. And I am putting our skeins in there for a rinse bath. They will sit in there for another 15 or so minutes, and then I will pull them out to dry. Here I am taking them out of the rinse water, squeezing out as much liquid as I can. Wool can hold 30% of its weight in water without feeling wet. So it's really important to squeeze out as much liquid as you can so that you can hopefully get this all dry within the same day or two within washing it. So I'm just squeezing down the length of the skein of yarn, squeezing out as much liquid as I can, and then putting it into my wool-only salad spinner to bring outside to dry. So now I have gotten outside with my yarn. It's a beautiful day out, perfect day for drying some wool, and I'm just laying stuff out on my nice drying rack, which I use for all kinds of woolly purposes. It's a great staple to have in my studio. And this wool will just hang out outside for most of the rest of the day and hopefully get nice and dry. All right, friends, so this is what we have. It's still a little bit wet. It's not all the way dry yet, but this is what our yarn looks like. It does not have that crinkly ramen texture at all anymore, which I am thrilled about. That was what I wanted to get rid of. And we also got it a little bit cleaner. Remember how dirty that wash water was? So this is in much better shape than it was before we washed it. So I'm very happy. I hope that you learned something in this video. I hope you now know how to deconstruct and reclaim yarn from a sweater that doesn't fit. And that'll do it for today. So I hope you have a great day. I hope you get some crafting in, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye, friends.